guys, it's Deanna from Stitches Quilting, and today we are doing a block on how to sew a half square triangle quilt block. If you are new to quilting and want to learn how to quilt or sew, this is a great quilt for you to work on. So we're going to work on this half square triangle block, but as we're working on it, we are actually going to be making the Live Well, Live Strong quilt. The Live Well, Live Strong quilt is a quilt that has 26 blocks about women's health and wellness. And our very first quilt block of this sew-along, which I don't know if you've done a sew-along before, is a fuel quilt block. And it's a very basic concept that we just need the right amount of fuel in our body, whether that's through how much we're eating, how much water we're drinking, how much sleep we're getting, whatever that might be. So let's go ahead and look at working on this half square triangle quilt block. I'll go ahead and show you. So let's go ahead and go to the overhead view. I have a quilt block here that is the half square triangle, and this is the typical way that it's been seen in the original quilt, which is right over here. But I also am doing a black and white version of this quilt. There's several different colorways that you can actually do. So, but let me go ahead and show you. These are the fabrics that we're going to be using today. And let me go ahead and show you a little bit about the pattern. I've actually put the pattern in a 3-ring binder, and I have put them into sheet protectors. The pattern is a PDF download, or you can have a print copy that I can mail to you. The fuel quilt block instructions are right here. I've tried to write the pattern so it's a very visual pattern, and you don't need to get bogged down in a lot of different text and heavy text and instructions that just get sometimes overwhelming, because we want you to get this quilt block made and then the quilt made too. So let's go ahead and look at this. The instructions say to cut a square. It has the exact dimensions. To cut one in the red and the pink fabric. So I've gone ahead and done that. And then the instructions then say to cut that square into a half square triangle. So let's go ahead and look at this. Here are the 2 squares that we've got, and I've cut them to the correct dimensions that it says in the pattern. We're then going to take a ruler and just bring it from point to point on your red square right here, and then we're going to cut this in half. And this gives us precisely the size that you need for your half square triangle. This will be some extra fabric for you, but you can go ahead and use this fabric as you cut other pieces for your quilt. Now, we're going to do the same thing with the complementary fabric, and the fabrics that I'm using are solid fabrics. And we are going to go ahead and just take a slice here. I've once again put it from point to point, and I'm cutting this fabric just directly in the center there from point to point, so I have 2 half square triangles. Let's go ahead and now place these blocks so that they look like the actual block that we're going to be stitching. So you can see here we've got these 2 blocks placed together, and it looks very similar to this block right here, but we are now going to put right sides together. Since I'm using a solid fabric, there is not a right or wrong side to these fabrics, but I'm going to put them right sides together like this. And then you can easily put some pins right there to go ahead and secure your stitching if you feel like you need to. And you can move them up over on this side too. It's just up to you and your preferences while you're stitching. And let's go ahead and get that in there. Now, when we go ahead, let's go ahead and take this over to the sewing machine. When I sew and when I do quilting, this is a great quilt for a beginner quilter or one for a very experienced quilter that just wants a quick sew and to sew actually with meaning. All quilting is done with a 1/4 inch seam. I am using a 1/4 inch foot here. You can actually use a regular foot too on your sewing machine, but you'll want to mark where your 1/4 inch seam is on your sewing machine. And you can do that by just bringing your ruler over, measuring that 1/4 inch mark, and then putting a piece of painter's tape right down here on your sewing machine so that you're always following that guide. I'm going to follow the guide of the 1/4 inch foot, which is the edge of the foot here. And as I stitch this together, I'm going to stitch right down along the edge, and that will give me the 1/4 inch seam that I'm needing. So let me go ahead and get this started. Sorry, I had some extra thread there. That was so silly. Let's go ahead and pull that out. Let's get that started again. I should have pulled my threads back. All right, which is always smart to pull your threads back before you start stitching. So let's go ahead and get that 1/4 inch seam. I am using all white Aurifil thread on this quilt, and any white thread will do. You can use a colored thread, whatever you'd like to do, but in making the original quilt, I used all white thread in my piecing. Everybody has a different preference though, and that is also up to you. So you can see here, I'll remove my pins, go ahead and put them back in that pin holder, and you can see the 1/4 inch seam that I have here with the white thread on that red fabric. And it looks nice and straight, which in this quilt, it's all straight line stitching. And we can all sew a straight line. It's not that difficult. So let's go ahead and open this up and take a look at it. So you can see that's a great half square triangle, but we're wanting to go ahead and press that. So let's bring this back over to the mat and get our pressing mat out and our iron. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually set my seams so that the seams become kind of one with the fabric right there. So I'm going to go ahead and just set that there, and then I'm going to open this up and press that seam over to the darker side of the fabric. I'm going to explain what that means. Let me go ahead and just get a good press on this. Okay, so as you can see here, this little seam allowance and that flap of fabric is now pressed toward the darker side of the fabric, which is this red fabric right over here. And there is not excess fabric coming over here on that peach colored fabric. So as we turn this over, we've really got a really beautiful, nicely done half square triangle quilt block, which represents fuel in this quilt and what kind of fuel we're putting into our body. Now we're going to want to go ahead and square up this quilt block. So let me go ahead and do that. I have a 6.5 inch ruler, and there's several of these blocks that are actually the 6.5 inch size, and I'm going to go ahead and trim this block down so it's 6.5 inches square. That is the size that we need before it is sewn into the quilt. When it's sewn into the quilt, you can see the instructions say that when it's finished, it's 6 inches by 6 inches. So the 6 inches by 6 inches means that once it's sewn into the quilt, it is finished. You can see the quilt block at 6 inches by 6 inches. But before it gets sewn into the quilt, we need it to be a 6.5 inch square quilt block, so that then we can have the 1/4 inch seam allowances on each side to then make that a 6 inch square. So you can see I'm just trimming down my block. Sometimes I like to have excess triangles that are a little bit larger so that I have room to square things down and to make the block look just right. I wanted to show you one other facet about quilting. You can either quilt with your seams pressed to the dark side, or you can quilt with your seams pressed open. It's not totally necessary with this particular quilt block, but if you have a complicated quilt block with a lot of piecing, you might want to go ahead and press your seams open so that the block might appear to be a little bit flatter. So let's go ahead and just press that, and then I'll turn it around and we'll press it again. Both ways just give a really flat, beautiful look to your quilt block. So let's go ahead and look at what I've got here for you. I think we could go ahead and do the front view and show you again the pattern. So this is the pattern that you can download at Stitches Quilting. This is a 6-month sew-along. Sew-alongs are a lot of fun on Facebook, Instagram, and to watch on YouTube. But what's even more wonderful are all the people that you get to meet as you sew along with the quilt. So what I also do for you is each week I provide a video tutorial on how to exactly make your quilt block. What you will need is to actually purchase the pattern so you have the instructions for cutting your fabrics. Then each week I also do a blog post I'm Deanna from Stitches Quilting. So I publish that at Stitches Quilting, and I do a blog post all about that block topic and about the block. And I prepare for you a worksheet that then you can download So this is the fuel worksheet that you can download at Stitches Quilting. The worksheets are free for anyone. So if you just want to join us on this journey that we're quilting for health and wellness, you can go ahead and just join us on the health and wellness aspect if this isn't a hobby that you're doing at this time. But we would love for everybody to join us along and just empower more women just around the world. I know it feels really good. But this is a worksheet that you can download and then be able to enjoy all the exercises. So you can make a goal for yourself this week to maybe drink 8 glasses of water that day, or to get 7 hours of sleep during the night. Whatever the goal might be, this is a worksheet for you to work through and to have a personal journey of your own. So this is a book that I go ahead and I put this in. You can see the quilt that's behind me with those 26 quilt blocks. It's very bright, it's beautiful, and each of the quilt blocks have different meanings, all the way from healing to strength to leisure, which is our next block for next week. So, which is a basic pinwheel block, which it just represents having a lot of fun and taking time out to take care of yourself. So, but remember this week, we're focusing on the half square triangle fuel block, and the fuel block is just very, very simple. It just is a simple half square triangle, because putting the right amount of fuel in our body is sometimes a very simple concept that can be a little tricky to do in our busy lives. I'm Deanna from Stitches Quilting. Please follow me on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. I have accounts on all of those places, and I will stream my live videos and all of the instructions for this on all those platforms. When you share your block, there are prizes each week when you share your block and online, and we have wonderful things that are going on. So be sure to follow on all the platforms, because I love to just have fun and get to know each one of you guys. You can post your block in the Facebook group, Everyone Can Quilt. My business page is Stitches Quilting Deanna Wall, or if you post on Instagram, use the hashtag Live Well, Live Strong Quilt. And then you can follow along with everyone else and be able to comment on everybody else's blocks and be able to share in their journey of creating this quilt and their health and wellness journey together. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time for some leisure and to learn how to stitch together a pinwheel block. See you on the next side.